DC Rebirth and new titles absolutely dominate this week. So, stick around and find out what I picked up. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, where I go over the books that I picked up this week, give you a little bit of an idea of what they're all about, and whether there's something you should pick up too. To start that off with, we're going to go with a brand new book, and that is going to be Blue Beetle Rebirth #1. So, this is the one-shot, I believe, the one-shot into the Blue Beetle universe, and to be perfectly honest with you, I made it a couple pages into it, and I'm gonna have to force myself to really read this book. It feels right from the get-go that it's not a book for me, so that's something that I'm gonna have to overcome myself, just because it's something that I'm not really I wouldn't go looking for this particular book, and I feel like that's doing it a disservice, but that's the honest-to-God truth. So, we'll see where it goes once I get a chance to read it. Next, we go on to a book that I did get a chance to read, and that is Hellblazer #1. So this is the post-Rebirth one-shot kind of issue. We see John Constantine back in London, and he's got to give help to an old friend while trying to get an old friend to help him. So I really like where this is going. The Hellblazer, it's not quite Vertigo Hellblazer, it's not quite Vertigo John Constantine, but I really get the feeling that we're going to delve into some of John Constantine's backstory, and it's going to be a really good place for him to be. It feels homey. You know, it doesn't feel like John Constantine on the road. It feels like where he should be and how he should be dealing with things. And I really like this whole Justice League dark kind of environment that they're probably going to be setting up. Really happy with where this book's headed, and I can't wait to finish out the first arc. Then we get into Deathstroke #1. So this is me giving this book another chance after reading the Rebirth issue, because I like Christopher Priest. I like his writing. This is not a book for me. I'm just going to be blatantly obvious with that. It is just not a book for me. It's something that I'm not really interested in at all. Compared to the rest of the DC Rebirth slate, it is not a book that has captured my interest in the least, unfortunately, because Deathstroke seems like a very interesting character. It's just that either I'm overwhelmed with current stories that I have, or I just don't find it nearly as engaging as it should be, really, to really have me bring it along. That doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it, but to be honest, it's just not my cup of tea. However, something that is more my cup of tea is going to be The Flash. So this is issue 5 of The Flash, and this sees something like Barry Allen's day off. And instead of being like Ferris Bueller and taking somebody else's dad's Ferrari for a spin, he gives the keys to the castle to the other speedsters that have been kind of resurrected by this lightning storm. And we'll see what happens when Barry Allen takes a day off, and when other people with their best intentions try to really take on the role and responsibilities that he has. It really shows you how Barry Allen and even Wally West are unique characters within the DC landscape, and the shoulders, the broad shoulders, the burdens that they have to take on. You know, this is just Joshua Williamson really saying, hey, Flash can't ever have anything nice. And it's very frustrating. I'm sure it's very frustrating for Barry Allen as much as it is for us readers. Then we get on to one of my favorite books, probably because of the pacing, and that is Wonder Woman #5. So this is the Frank Cho cover, which is great because I love this. See this cover actually finished. The only thing they had in the previews was like the line artwork, so I didn't really know what it was going to look like. And overall, this cover came out awesome. But as far as the story, we see Greg Rucka taking his two-at-a-time kind of storytelling. So we've got alternating issues where the odd issues, like this one, are present-day stories. The even issues are, year one type stories, origin stories for Wonder Woman. And we're going to see how those connect down the line. How they're going to create a path and kind of merge into what we find to be Wonder Woman of the modern day. And in this story, we see basically like how things are moving around Wonder Woman. It's not really even focused on her that much. It's focused on the world, how it's shaping around, and what the needs of the world are regarding Wonder Woman. And then towards the end, there's this great moment where she's just like, Christopher! And then, like these other people that she knows, and she's like, what the hell are you doing here? Where the hell is Steve? And that's where we're going to pick up in issue 7. So I really like the way that Greg Rucka is writing this. I really like where this is going, and with the Wonder Woman movie on the horizon, it's going to be a great way for people to get into the character and get familiar, so that way they can kind of see where these things dance about in terms of the narrative and the storytelling. So I definitely recommend picking up Wonder Woman and catching up. And if you want to, you can just go issue 1, issue 3, issue 5, or if you want to do a little bit more of an origin kind of story, you can just go issue 2, issue 4, and then 2 weeks from now, I believe they're going to be doing issue 6. So that's going to be good. Next, we get into a really interesting book, and that's a Dark Horse title, and that is Kingsway West. So Kingsway West is written by Greg Pak, and Greg Pak is really famous for, doing World War Hulk, Planet Hulk. He's writing totally awesome Hulk right now, and this is a blend of a alternate history where essentially various companies from China went across the Pacific Ocean in a hunt for red gold, this mystical kind of artifact, and it's going to blend, like gunslinging Wild West type action with, Eastern mysticism and a little bit of sci-fi alternate history. And I really like the take on it, but it's definitely a book that you're going to have to judge for yourself. Some people aren't necessarily going to appreciate the changes in history. Some people aren't necessarily going to appreciate the way that the character development is going, but I like it. I really like it a lot. Just because it's such a blend of different things, and it's creating a very... I'm interested to see how thought out the world is going to be. I feel like he's very good at world developing, so this is going to be something that we'll just see fleshed out more and more over the next few titles. But the start of, characters got decent motivations. There wasn't really enough development for the initial relationship between him and his... Well, you're going to find out. Read the book, you'll find out, and you might agree with me in some respects. But overall, it's definitely a book you should give a shot to. Then we get into my top 5 books of the week, and to start off with, I'm going to go with Batgirl number 2. And Batgirl number 2, Hope Larson, Raphael Albuquerque. First off, just look at this cover. Look at this cover. This is like a variant cover on your regular covers. Just the powerful use of yellow and all that is just it's a great cover. It's a great display of that particular book. And the characterization and the writing of Batgirl in here, it's definitely a soul-searching, trying to find myself, get caught up in some sort of espionage kind of tale, and I really like that. I really like the way that the book's going, and I'm really happy with the creative team right now and where it's moving forward. I can totally get behind them not paying any kind of like lip service to the Nightwing storyline, where Babs kind of shows up over there, so it's great to have her on her own independent title and being treated the way that she is. So it's a really entertaining book. Even though it might not be geared for me, I really find myself liking it. Next, we get into one of my favorite books that's currently out, and that is Renato Jones number 4. So, Renato Jones, written, illustrated, owned. Basically, it's Carr Andrews spilling himself out onto the page in respects, and it's great. This kind of stepped away from the mindless violence, and it gives us a backstory. It gives us a little bit more context for the relationship between Renato Jones and Bliss's relationship with her father, and Bliss's relationship with money, and how that's going to impact the story moving forward. And then the last page is the idea behind the next cover, which is just like, fuck you, Carr Andrews. What are you doing? And that's, I say that with such love for where the story is going, because you're like, no, there's no way that could happen. It's only the fifth issue. Like, why would that be a possibility? But the letters page is probably one of the best parts about the book. Besides, like, the art is very strong. It might not be the most detailed, but it's very strong. The characterization, it's a little flimsy, but you've got a very deep and visceral sense of where he's coming from. I like the way that the story is developing, and then shedding light on Bliss's character in this issue, and the cover for next issue, where it says right on that cover preview, spoilers, etc. I just dig the way that this is going about. Definitely one of my favorite books, definitely one that I always recommend, so go out and pick it up, so that way you can understand what I'm talking about, and not just the incoherent rambling that I'm putting on camera right now. It's great, I love it. Then we get into the next book that I'm really enjoying, and that is Detective Comics. So this is issue 939, and James Tynion IV, very proper title. I'm a third, he's the fourth, so he's got a little bit more regality than I do. He's doing a great job. This is a great ensemble book. He's paying very good attention to each individual character. He's giving a bit more screen time in this one to Red Robin. He's given a little bit more to Batwoman. He's given some more development to the actual characters behind those. And he is setting up probably what is going to be one of the most badass Robin-style fight scenes in comic books. And it's going to be awesome, and it looks awesome. If you want to have more Bat family, I feel like he's really setting the bar for what the Bat family should be in kind of a standalone title. So definitely pick it up if you want to see a little bit more of the perimeter. Not necessarily focused directly on Batman, but the people and the goings-on around him. Once we get done with Detective Comics, we start doing a little bit more investigative work with Titans #2. So Dan Abnett and Titans #2 is really the book that is pushing forward a bit of the DC Rebirth narrative. So this is, if you read Titans #1, you know that Kadabra is kind of like this quintessential plot piece in this current arc of the story, but he's implying that he's a much bigger part of the ongoing DC Rebirth type titles. And everything still seems to be keying around Wally West and what it means for him to have returned into this universe. And there's reference to time. So there's a lot of different key points for, DC Rebirth speculation, which I could do a whole video on that. But it's something that you'd want to pick up and you'd want to read, because there's a few different revelations, regarding the whole lasso of persuasiveness or lasso of truth or whatever you've got that Donna Troy's got, and that was a pretty funny moment. But then there's these little Easter eggs, these little hints that are getting left out there by Dan Abnett, and they're definitely something worth reading, especially if you want to kind of keep pace with where the overall narrative is going. I'd be interested to see if this is kind of when the Olympic torch goes from one place to another, they hand it off to different runners, different people in the middle, so that they can continue on the legacy of the Olympics. So in this case, is this Dan Abnett holding that torch for DC Rebirth until he can hand it off to the next person that's going to integrate it into their storyline? And I feel like that would be a very interesting way, so that way, DC can weave an overall narrative through all the books, and only time's going to tell. But it feels like that's really going to be the case, and I really hope because it would be so cool, and it would be a great way to get all the other titles involved, rather than just leaving it up to one book, one author, one perspective, one point of view to try and tell that overall story. Finally, we get into the conclusion of the Superman Doomsday fight, which is made for the 90s, and yet here in present day 2016, and that is Action Comics 960. So Action Comics came on, and I had to say, the first Action Comics that came out, I was just like, this thing is crap. It was overblown, it was overwhelming, there was way too much going on. It was just everybody threw everything into the pot, and it was a really bad soup. It was a really bad stew. It felt like too many cooks in the kitchen because of how many characters and things they were trying to force in. And then what Dan Jurgens did was kind of pull those different pieces away. So it's just okay, yeah, we've got Clark Kent with no powers, and he pulls that away. And then we've got Lex Luthor, and we're going to take Lex Luthor out of the battle a little bit. And then we've got and then we're going to move everything out. We're going to take Wonder Woman out of the fray for a little bit. We're going to give Doomsday and Superman a little bit of time, and then bring them back in at the key moments. Books like Action Comics 960 and Detective Comics 939, they complement the main pieces of the overall story arc, and very well-developed pieces, and not just, hey, maybe I'll pick up that other Superman book. So right now it's a situation where I've got Superman, I've got Batman, I've got those books, but then I've also got Action Comics and Detective Comics, and they're offering me something complementary, something that enhances the experience of the main title, which is really what they're supposed to be, and it gives them the opportunity to kind of deal with different aspects. So Superman is a very personal story, where Action Comics takes some of that personal story but makes it very big. It blows it up into the world around Superman, which is very nice. So definitely Action Comics, and the way that Rebirth is going forward with some of these things makes for a great read. So I can't help but recommend picking up books like that and opening and broadening your horizons regarding those particular books. So those are all the comics I picked up this week, but I want to hear what you grabbed too, so hit me up in the comments down below. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.